The moment it happened, the world seemed to stop breathing. In the middle of a sacred ceremony, surrounded by song, dust, drums, and thousands of watchful eyes, an elderly village chief slowly rose to his feet. His back was bent, but his spirit was unbroken. And in front of the entire nation, he did the unthinkable. He turned his back on President Ibrahim Traoré. He did not bow. He did not smile. He did not accept the handshake. Instead, he spat on the ground near Ibrahim's boots, and the sound echoed louder than the drums. The crowd fell silent. Hands drifted toward holsters. Necks stiffened. Hearts pounded so hard they could be heard. And then the chief spoke, not with disrespect, but with a pain that had been waiting years to be heard. I will not accept gifts bought with forgotten blood. The air became heavy, like the sun itself was listening. And in that suffocating silence, everyone waited for the explosion. Because power, real power, is usually loud. It punishes. It dominates. But what Ibrahim did next did not just silence the crowd. It rewrote what leadership meant. Stay with me, because this is where the story becomes something much deeper than politics. It becomes a story about truth, grief, and the price of pretending everything is fine. But first, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And what time is it there right now? Now breathe in, because we are going to the village of Bani, where the sun burns the earth, and broken promises live longer than people. Bani wasn't just a village. It was a slow-fading memory on a cracked map, a place where roads became red scars in the earth and water was a prayer whispered, not guaranteed. The clinic shelves? Empty. The medicine? Imaginary. The hope? Stretched thin, like the skin of an old drum. People here had seen enough speeches to last 10 lifetimes. Leaders came. Leaders smiled. Leaders disappeared. But this time, rumors spread like wildfire. Ibrahim Traoré was coming. Not a delegate. Not a spokesperson. Not a convoy of polished excuses. The president himself. And at 10 a.m. sharp, dusty trucks rolled in. No red carpets. No brass bands. No glitter. Just a man in uniform, with a beret pulled low, and responsibility heavy on his shoulders. He greeted no cameras. He scanned no lenses. He walked straight toward the elders, seated beneath a massive baobab tree whose roots held more history than any textbook. And when he lifted the ceremonial sack of grain, the air trembled with expectation. This was the script. This was how it always went. Handshake. Applause. Departure. But Chief Kader, carved by time and grief, did not extend his hand. He stared into Ibrahim's eyes, and then knocked the sack to the ground. The dust rose slowly, like a spirit finally released. "We do not eat promises," he roared. The crowd gasped. The guards moved. The moment sharpened to a blade. "You bring grain for the cameras? Yet where were you when our wells died? Where were you when our children faded in our arms?" His voice broke, not with anger, but with grief. And everyone expected fire. An arrest. A command. A lesson taught through force. But Ibrahim did not move. He lifted one calm hand. "Stand down." The world blinked. And then he did something that shook the nation. He bent down, not as a president, but as a son of the soil, picked up the sack, brushed the dust away, and placed it gently on a table. Then he stepped closer to the old man, close enough to hear the pain in his breath. He switched off the microphone, because real conversations do not need spectators. And he asked one quiet question. "Who did you lose?" The chief was ready to fight, ready to be silenced, ready to be dragged away. But he was not ready to be heard. His eyes filled. "Malik," he whispered. "My grandson. He was 7." And the world cracked open. The story spilled out, raw, heavy, unstoppable. A clinic that never opened. Medicine that never arrived. Budgets that never reached. A child who died on concrete, outside a locked door that was built to save him. The crowd did not speak. The wind stopped. Even the earth seemed ashamed. Ibrahim did not defend himself. He did not blame the past. He said only 3 words. "I hear you." Then slowly he turned. His eyes scanned the polished officials in their clean suits. Their smiles evaporated. One man tried to shrink into the background. The regional health director. And Ibrahim called him forward, not with rage, but with truth. What happened next would take them to that clinic, to the locked doors, to the dust, to the silence, and to a discovery that was not just corruption, but betrayal wrapped in cardboard. Boxes sealed shut. Medicine meant to save lives, hidden like stolen treasure. And the story is only beginning, because what they found inside that clinic would not just start an investigation. It would spark a manhunt and a reckoning. Stay with me. Breathe. We're going inside. Chief Cater's fingers trembled as he traced the ink on the dusty box. The date printed on the label felt like a wound reopening. Delivered 3 years ago. His lips parted, but no sound came out. Then the truth hit him like a physical blow. When I carried Malik here, when he was burning alive in my arms. His voice broke. The medicine was 5 meters away. Meters. The world tilted beneath him. He turned, tears streaming, chest heaving, and faced the regional director whose hands now shook not from fear of punishment, but from the weight of being exposed. You had it, Cater whispered, then louder. You had it. His grief echoed through the empty hall. And you let my grandson die. Director So began to panic, his polished calm collapsing like wet paper. No, wait, you don't understand, these are strategic reserves, we were waiting for authorization, the paperwork. But excuses sounded like poison in the air. Ibrahim didn't shout. He didn't rage. He went silent, a silence so sharp, it felt like a blade. He calmly drew the combat knife from his belt. So flinched, expecting violence. But Ibrahim simply sliced open the box. The flap folded back, revealing sealed packets of anti-malarial medication, untouched, unused, long forgotten. He picked one up and turned it in the light. Strategic reserves? He said quietly. He flipped the packet over. These expired 6 months ago. The words did not echo, they sank. Into the walls. Into the hearts of everyone watching. Into the soul of a nation. Outside, children had died. Inside, the cure had waited in the dark. Ibrahim placed the expired tablets down. Carefully. Respectfully. Then he turned, not toward So, but toward a dusty desk where thick ledger books lay stacked like silent conspirators. He kicked them over. Pages spilled across the floor like spilled secrets. He picked one up, flipped through it, and stopped. His jaw tightened. Because it wasn't inventory. It was sales. Dates. Amounts. Client names. Cash received. Life-saving medicine, sold like contraband in the night. 500 units, Ibrahim read quietly. To City Care Private Pharmacy. 200 more, he turned the page. To Crossbar Traders. Cash. Wire transfers. Profit. He threw the ledger at So's feet. You weren't waiting for authorization, Ibrahim said softly, and somehow that softness was more terrifying than any shout. You built a marketplace out of suffering. You turned the sickness of children into your business model. The cameras captured everything. The nation watched, speechless. Mothers cried. Doctors clenched their fists. Soldiers stood frozen, ashamed that uniforms shared space with men like this. So's mask dropped. Anger replaced fear. You can't prove anything, he spat. I have friends in the ministry. I have rights. You don't arrest people like me. He said it wrong. He said it like a man who believed his comfort was permanent. Ibrahim stepped close enough for So to feel his breath. Arrest him. The order landed like a thunderclap. Handcuffs snapped shut behind his back. Not gently. And as soldiers dragged him toward the doorway, So broke. It wasn't just me, he shouted, desperation cracking his voice. You think I could move this much stock alone? If I fall, I take the whole network with me. Ministers. Directors. Businessmen. This is bigger than you. The soldiers paused. Ibrahim turned back slowly. So talk, he said. So swallowed. You start this war, and you'll be fighting the wealthiest men in Ouagadougou. The pause. Then Ibrahim's eyes hardened, not with hatred, but with resolve. "Good," he said. "I don't fear powerful men. I fear the silent graves of children." He nodded to his men. "Take him." As they dragged So away, still yelling names, deals, secrets, Ibrahim walked back to the ledger on the floor. He turned to the final page. And there it was. A signature. A familiar name. Not just a businessman. Not just a distant official. Someone who had eaten at his table. Someone who had laughed with him. Someone he had trusted. The betrayal cut deeper than any enemy's bullet. He closed the book. The room felt colder. He turned and saw Chief Cater cradling a box of expired pills in shaking hands, crying silently. Crying not just for Malik, but for every child whose story never reached a camera. Ibrahim walked to him, placing a steady hand on the elder's shoulder. "This clinic opens today," he said softly. "Break the locks. Power the generators. Distribute every dose that is still safe." "But who will run it?" the chief asked, voice fragile. "We have no doctors." Ibrahim pulled out his satellite phone. "Then doctors will come," he said. "By sunset." Within minutes, military medics were mobilizing. Beds were cleaned. Lights flickered alive for the first time. The smell of dust turned into the smell of disinfectant. The clinic breathed. Word spread fast. Women cried tears of relief. Men stood straighter. Hope, real hope, returned like rain after drought. But Ibrahim did not celebrate. He stepped back into his vehicle, closed the door, and stared at the name inside the ledger. He knew what it meant. This was no small cleanup. This was a declaration of war, not against a country, but against greed-wearing suits. Against men with private armies. Against those who profit from despair. Against traitors smiling in the daylight. He looked out through the windshield. Chief Cater was hugging a mother, putting medicine in her hands. And Ibrahim whispered a promise, not to her, but to every family like hers. This ends now. But he also knew something darker. The men he was going to challenge were already watching. And they do not surrender quietly. This fight would not just test his power. It would test his faith, his loyalty, his very survival. And as the sun began to set over Bani, the shadow war had already begun. Because somewhere, in a silent boardroom, a powerful man leaned back in his chair and said only 2 words: "Eliminate him." But that part of the story is still to come. Stay with me, because what happens next will shake the foundation of the presidency itself. Abraham made the call. "Get the chopper ready. We are going back to the capital tonight, and tell the special forces to gear up. We have a house to raid." Engines roared to life. Soldiers rushed into formation. The air was thick with dust and tension. But just as the convoy prepared to leave, a black SUV with tinted windows screeched across the exit road and stopped. Blocking them, 4 men in dark suits stepped out. They weren't soldiers. They were private military contractors, the kind of men who didn't exist on paper. Heavily armed. Cold eyes. No loyalty except to money. The lead contractor raised a phone in the air. "Mr. President," he shouted over the engines, "you might want to answer this before you make a mistake you can't undo." Abraham's security detail reacted instantly, rifles raised, fingers on triggers. The standoff exploded into frozen silence. Guns. Abraham opened his door slowly. He ignored the desperate warnings of his guards and walked toward the man in the suit. "Who is on the phone?" he asked. The man smiled, a shark smile. "Someone who says he has something of yours. Something you care about very much." Abraham took the phone. He didn't speak. He listened. And when the voice finally came through, his blood ran cold. It was calm, smooth, familiar. Too familiar. A voice that had once trained him, guided him, shaped him. A voice he respected more than any other. "Ibrahim," the voice said quietly. "Put the ledger down. Leave the town. Go back to the palace. Forget you ever came here. Do this, and you stay president. Push this any further, and you lose everything." Abraham swallowed. His throat was dry. "Colonel Zong," he whispered. His mentor. His former commander. The man who had once pinned captain's bars onto his uniform. Now protecting corruption. Was everything you taught me a lie? Ibrahim asked softly. You said a soldier's honor is his life. Honor doesn't pay the bills, son, Zong replied coldly. Turn around. This is your last warning. The line went dead. Abraham lowered the phone. The mercenary smirked. So, what's the play, Mr. President? He asked smugly. Do we clear the road, or do we have a problem? They were outgunned. Any fight here would be suicide. But Ibrahim Traoré never played by the rules of math. He played by the rules of will. He stepped forward, right into the mercenary's space, nose to nose. Your boss thinks I'm a politician, Ibrahim said quietly. He thinks I negotiate. And then he moved. Too fast to see. He grabbed the rifle barrel with one hand and head-butted the mercenary with brutal force. The man collapsed like a puppet with its strings cut. Before the others could react, Ibrahim yanked a flashbang grenade from his vest, pulled the pin, and tossed it under their SUV. White light. Thundershock. Screams. Drive, he roared, jumping behind the wheel of his own truck. The convoy surged forward. Engines howled. Tires screamed. Ibrahim slammed the accelerator. Metal met metal as his reinforced truck rammed the mercenary SUV off the road. They broke through. Go! 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 The convoy tore across the highway, 140 kilometers per hour, dust clouds chasing them like ghosts. Inside the cab, young Lieutenant Musa trembled. Colonel Zong controls the capital garrison. He controls the airbase. We are driving into a trap. Ibrahim's hands tightened on the wheel. He knows we have the ledger. He knows everything. And he will move before we do. Musa swallowed. So, where do we go? The safe house. No, Ibrahim snapped. If we hide, we look guilty. Zong will flip the story. He will say I stole the medicine. We go to the national broadcaster. We show the truth before he cuts the signal. It became a race against time. 2 hours to the capital. The sky bled orange as the sun sank, shadows stretching like claws across the savannah. Then the truck radio crackled. Not military. National news. Breaking update, the announcer said urgently. Sources confirm President Ibrahim Traoré is implicated in a massive medical theft operation. A warrant has been issued for his arrest. Musa's face went pale. They declared you a criminal. They launched a coup. Ibrahim didn't slow. Not yet, he said. We still have the truth. But as the city skyline appeared, he saw it. And his heart dropped. The highway was blocked. Not by trucks. Not by men. But by tanks. Their cannons aimed directly at him. Behind him? Empty desert. No escape. Musa whispered, voice broken. Sir, it's over. We can't fight tanks. Ibrahim looked at the ledger on the dashboard. At the proof that could save thousands of lives. And then, he made a decision. He opened the door. And stepped out. Alone. Dusty boots on hot asphalt. Facing steel giants. The tank commander's voice thundered. Halt. This is your final warning. But Ibrahim kept walking. Until he stood only 10 meters away. Close enough to see the eyes inside the metal beast. He lifted his chin. I am Captain Ibrahim Traoré, he shouted. I am your brother in arms. You swore an oath to protect the people, not thieves. If you want to kill me for defending them, then fire. But know this, you are killing the only man fighting for your children. Silence. Heavy. Cracking. Suffocating. The tank turret shifted. The barrel lowered. Right at his chest. The gunner's finger moved toward the trigger. The world held its breath. The tank hatch opened. A young soldier emerged. No weapon. Just a radio in his shaking hand. He stared at Ibrahim, at the man standing alone before death. And his voice broke as he shouted. Colonel Zong told us you were a traitor. He said you sold the medicine. But... He swallowed. Tears in his eyes. Sir, my sister died last year because the hospital had no medicine. And you're the only one who ever came to ask why. The gun lowered. Slowly. Then another tank lowered its gun. Then another. And another. Until the line of steel giants. But not to a politician, but to a man who refused to kneel. And at that moment, the coup began to crack. Because truth. The gunner hesitated. Not because he feared death, but because truth had finally reached him. His sister was a nurse. She had sent a message. The clinic lights are on again. And suddenly, the enemy wasn't the man standing unarmed on the highway. The enemy was the lie. The turret turned. Not toward Ibrahim, but away from him. And the army followed their conscience. The capital didn't just wake up. It rose. People flooded the streets, not for chaos, but to walk beside a man who refused to abandon them. And when tanks rolled toward the national broadcaster, they weren't weapons. They were escorts of truth. Inside, Zhang fought his last war. Not with rifles, but with fear. But fear has a weakness. It cannot survive when ordinary people choose courage together. The gates opened. The truth walked in. And the lie finally broke. Television live, to the nation. Not a speech. Not theater. Just a tired soldier. With dusty boots. And a bleeding hand. Saying the words every nation longs to hear. I do not work for the elites. I work for you. And the people believed him. Because this time, they had already seen his actions. Not in palaces, but in clinics. In villages. In the eyes of the forgotten. And when justice finally came, it did not arrive with cheers. It arrived with relief. Because at last, someone chose duty over comfort, people over power, truth over silence. Months later, no speeches, no lights, no applause. Just Ibrahim, back in the village where it began. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't demand praise. He simply asked, "Is the clinic open?" "Yes," the chief replied softly. "And the children are playing again." And the wind carried that answer, like a prayer fulfilled. Because leadership is not noise. Leadership is service, proven quietly. And the legend spread, not of a perfect man, but of a man who refused to stop trying. A reminder to every future leader. Power is not how loudly you speak. Power is how deeply you care. True leadership isn't about titles, tanks, or fear. True leadership is the courage to say, "I hear you, and I will not walk away." If you believe the world needs more leaders who serve, not rule, then stay with us. Because our journey doesn't end here. It's only beginning. Subscribe. Not for numbers, but so these stories of courage keep living. Inside every person who still believes in honor.